My intention in this final khutbah is to share with you some insights from the last passage of Surah Al Hajj. Surah Al Hajj is of many unique qualities, and one of the most unique qualities of Surah Al Hajj is how the surah concludes. In it, in a sense, Allah Azza wa Jal describes the tragedy of all human history in just a couple of lines. It's from Allah's point of view, how has humanity performed from the beginning of creation of humanity all up until the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But before doing so, he gives humanity an example. He says to all humanity, Ya ayyuhan nas duriba mathal. People, an example is being struck. Some argue that the parts of this surah are Makki and parts are Madni, and that seems to make sense because the phrasing of Ya ayyuhan nas typically is for a larger community and where the majority of the people don't even believe in this message itself. When Allah addresses the people of the book, He says, Ya Ahl al-Kitab. When He addresses the Muslims, He says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. When He addresses people in general, regardless of their faith, it could be the mushrikun, including the Muslims, including the people of the book and everybody else, then it's Ya ayyuhan nas. So this is a very broad, open declaration to all of humanity. This includes people that have never heard anything about Islam before. This might be the first time they're hearing anything about it from Allah. Ya ayyuhan nas duriba mathal. An example is about to be struck, or an example has been struck. The idea of an example being struck as opposed to Allah mentioning Himself, like darab Allahu lakum mathalan, Allah is giving an example for your benefit, or He's about to strike an example for your benefit. No, He actually flips it around, making it passive, as if to say, I'm about to tell, something is about to be said, just listen to it. Don't worry about the speaker, just worry about the speech. And this is a very important consideration in communication. Oftentimes, before I even start speaking, just by looking at me, you're going to pass a number of judgments on whether or not you should be listening. Whether or not what I'm going to say is worth listening to or not. We do this all the time in all kinds of communication. We look at the speaker before we think about the speech. In this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jalla is actually removing Himself as the speaker. He didn't mention Himself. He just said an example is about to be given. In other words, He's calling humanity to pay attention without a bias. Just for a moment, don't think about the fact that this is Quran, or this is Islam, or this is a message trying to preach to you. Just ponder for a moment for yourself. And what is this example that He gives? What a strange example. And before He gives it, He says, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. Then listen to it very carefully. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. No doubt those that you call on, any besides Allah, any that you call on besides Allah, there's no doubt about it, لَن يَخْلُقُوا ذُبَابًا. They are never going to create a single fly. They're not going to create a single fly. And the question might arise, why do I care if they create a fly or not? And who is it that people are calling besides Allah? Look at the entire variety that's before us. You have people that worship idols, like the mushrikun of Makkah. They call idols, or the gods that they represent through those idols, besides Allah. There are those who consider Allah Azza wa Jal having daughters as angels, or sons as Isa alayhi salam, ma'adallah, and they call on them besides Allah. There are those who believed in saints, or sanctified people. They said, we're too ashamed to call on Allah ourselves, but these people that worship God so much and they're so close to God, if we just get on their good books, they'll put in a good word for us before Allah. Shufa'a'una indallah. They're going to just make a case for us, with Allah, because we're too dirty to make a case before Allah for ourselves. Then there are those, if you fast forward humanity to our time, there are those who don't worship anything. Actually, they still do. They worship science. I mean, I've seen scientists talk about the marvel of the universe as though they're in awe of it like a god. They're actually they're in worship of this form of knowledge, and all must submit to this ideology, this idea. So, in old times, people used to worship physical, material statues, or tangible names and tangible people other than Allah. But in our times, there are isms that are worshipped, right? Whether it's materialism, or it's agnosticism, or it's some other kind of ism. People are completely sold into an idea, and they rely on that concept other than relying on on Allah Himself. And their entire view of the world is shaped by this ism, just like an idol that is going to take care of everything. Well, now today there are these ideas that are going to take care of all of our problems. We don't need God in the equation anymore. So this is still relevant. This statement, those that you call on, any besides Allah, they still can't create a single fly. لَنْ يَخْلُقُوا ذُبَابًا. They can't create a single fly. وَلَوْ اجْتَمَعُوا لَهُ. Had they all gathered together, all of your different gods of all of your different religions and all of your different ideas and isms and all of your different philosophies and worldviews, even if the best of those minds came together to produce out of nothing a single fly, وَلَوْ اجْتَمَعُوا لَهُ, they wouldn't be able to do it. But let's not even go that far. And why even give the example of a fly? Because a fly is before people all the time. But then Allah takes this a step further. And He says, وَإِن يَسْلُبْهُمُ الذُّبَابُ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا or شَيْئًا وَإِن يَسْلُبْهُمُ الذُّبَابُ شَيْئًا. If the fly was to steal something from them. You're sitting there eating a sandwich, a fly shows up, sits on your food for a second, and flies off. You don't notice that anything's missing, but something is. The fly did in fact eat. It quickly, did its work, pulled out the food and flew off. There are fruit flies, there are, you're eating, especially if you're eating outdoors at a barbecue or something like that. And of course, eating outdoors was the more common practice back in the day. So you have constantly the problem of flies around food, right? And so our food nowadays is so artificial, even flies aren't interested. But like the idea is natural food, naturally flies are interested in it. And they'll come and they'll gather around it. But particularly, I want to highlight that, religions of a pagan tradition, religions where there are in fact idols. Even though this is broader, religions that have idols, they often have ceremonies where they put food in front of the idols. They'll bless the food in some kind of ritual, and they'll put it before the idol. People will bring all kinds of things and put them before this statue. And of course, they're worshiping it, and this food is sacred, it's dedicated. Maybe they're going to have it at some ceremony or something after it's been blessed. But until that, this thing that you've put, this chocolate milk or whatever it is that you put in front of the idol, cannot be touched. You're not supposed to touch it. The problem is these worshippers that are sitting there concentrated before the idols still can't prevent flies from showing up in the temple and sipping some of that chocolate milk or having some of that whatever's sitting there. They can't. And they keep shooing them away because it's a blasphemy before this God that these flies are gonna desecrate the temple. If a human being was to walk into that temple and pick up that glass and drink it, they'd get killed. But flies do it all the time. Flies disrespect this God all the time. And then they sit on the nose of the statue and let the statue know, I'm about to drink your milk. And then they go do it. So in other words, the powerlessness of these gods, not just that they can't create a fly, not only are they beyond creating this fly gets to rebel against their religion and insult their God, and these gods cannot take any revenge, not even against a single fly. That's the point that's being made here. Not only did you not create it, you can't control them. Even if they're being blasphemous against you. وَإِن يَسْلُبْهُمُ الذُّبَابُ شَيْئًا لَا يَسْتَنْقِذُوهُ مِنْهُ. They can't even try to get it from him. Now this is interesting. Because if a fly took something from you and you say, give that back, I paid for it, and you can't even begin to, what are you going to do? As a human being, you can't even begin to catch it. But more so, isn't that true for these idols that are sitting there? They're not even bothered. At least you do this. The idol can't even, unless you create a mechanical one that just does this all the time, they can't. They're powerless, and their powerlessness that they can't even demonstrate the will or the desire to retrieve what was taken from them is impossible. لا يستنقذوه منه. And in doing so, Allah puts at the end of this ayah an axiom, a statement. It's so powerful. It's actually a truth that extends to all of our experience in this life. And that statement is ضعف الطالب والمطلوب. The seeker and the one that's being sought. The one in need is the talib. The one who wants is the talib. The thing that is wanted is the matlub. He says both of them are inherently weak. This is interesting because the word da'ufa, it's not as du'ifa, like in other words, has been made weak. It's actually naturally, its predisposition is to be weak. It's how you were made. You were made weak. Like Allah says, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. But Allah Azza wa Jal here is saying that you and I are always in pursuit. We're always wanting something. Everybody wants something in their life. A young man wants to marry a woman. Somebody wants to graduate out of college. Somebody else wants to get a house. Somebody else wants to get a green card or citizenship. Somebody wants to move out of an apartment and move into a better home. Somebody wants a nicer car. There's all kinds of wants. We want our children to do better in school. There's a list of wants that we live by in life. And when we want these things, then we have to go to those who have. And the idea of us turning to Allah is Ar-Razaq. He's the one who has everything. He has the keys to, so everything you want, you're going to go ask Him. But that's also true of other religions. Everybody goes and asks some higher authority, some God, some idea, and there are those who only ask of money. The only pursuit they have is that of money. And Allah is saying in this ayah that anything besides Allah, any God that you will turn to besides Allah, in itself is weak. But as a matter of fact, anything else that even if you seek each other out, even if you just want help from each other, and any desire that you have, matlub is interesting because it refers to the gods, but it also refers to your desires. Your desires themselves are weak. You're weak, and the things you want are also weak. That's your reality. And what is it that you want so bad? You want a car? Okay, you've been thinking about this car, you watch the trailers, the videos. Oh, there's a new trailer that came out, let me watch that too. You order an online catalog, they mail it to you, you flip through the pages all the time. One of those cars drives by and the world stops for you and you're, well, what if you get it? Let's just say you got it. You're gonna go crazy for a week, 2 weeks, a year? Pretty soon you're gonna see trash in that car and people are gonna walk into that car and say, oh God, you don't care? Yeah, I haven't been to the car wash in a while. That same car that you were crazy about, you have no value for anymore. In so little time, that desire that overtook you was so weak that it just disappeared. Vanished into thin air. It's no longer there. And at one point it had consumed your mind entirely. That's the weakness of the human being. ضَعُفَ الطَّالِبُ وَالْمَطْلُوبُ. And after making this statement, if you think about ourselves and the things we run after, it's like when you're fasting, some of you, all you're thinking about is food. But the moment you finish eating, or mostly overeating, you can't even look at the same food anymore. That same food that had invaded you, the thought of it, it took over your heart and soul. And now you can't even look at it. Forget eating it. Somebody offers it. That's how weak your desire becomes. ضَعُفَ الطَّالِبُ وَالْمَطْلُوبُ. So now Allah makes this statement. It's powerful. مَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. They didn't appreciate Allah like He deserved to be appreciated. In other words, if you had just learned to seek Allah, if you had just learned to make Him happy, if you could all of your desires are there, but if you could put Him above all of those and just want to make Him happy in life, then you would have realized the only thing that will give you strength. Allah Azza wa Jal describes Himself in this ayah as إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ. Allah is ultimately mighty, the owner of all authority. Why does He describe Himself this way? It's actually a direct contrast with the previous ayah where He described myself and everything I pursue and all of the false gods in existence as weak. There's weakness contrasted with strength. Human beings will never find strength until they learn to seek Allah. Otherwise, they're gonna remain weak. It doesn't matter how muscular you become. It doesn't matter how wealthy you become. It doesn't matter how politically or socially influential you become. You're still weak. There's a hollowness inside you that can only be fulfilled when you seek out the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. This becomes like a way of looking at life. That you're on a journey and that journey ends وَأَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى. It ends with you meeting with the one who made you. And you're getting ready for that meeting. Just like when you guys, some of you are at work, you have a presentation to get ready for at work. And you want to make the boss happy. And everything you're doing before then is working hard, because you need to impress at that presentation. We're all getting ready for this presentation before Allah. Our life is moving along, chugging along. كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. You're chugging along, marching towards your master, and you're going to meet Him. And you better be in pursuit of making Him happy. And when you can do that, then everything else that makes you weak will actually take a back seat. And you'll find a kind of strength that you've never found before. When that really becomes your mindset, then what happens? All of your temptations, some young people are tempted by drugs, some by alcohol. some by the opposite gender, some by, messed up friends. These are all very powerful temptations. But when you're able to replace that with, I have a much higher goal, then you'll realize how weak those temptations are. They're not going to have that effect on you that they used to have. You don't find yourself as weak to be pulled into those attractive forces that you used to be before. Because there's something much more powerful pulling you towards yourself, towards Himself. That's Allah Azza wa Jal. Way more powerful. This is, Inna Allah laqawiyyun aziz. But Allah is also in this one statement describing the tragedy of humanity. Most human beings, they weren't able to appreciate Allah. They got caught up in this weak stuff. And they forgot about the fact that they were put on this earth to work towards meeting, and successfully meeting with Allah once again. And they got distracted. And that's the tragedy of humanity. They did not appreciate the fact that even in this life, not just meeting Him in the akhirah, even in this life, had we made Allah our priority, this life would have been better. Even the children of Israel were told, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ أَقَامُوا التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ. If they were only able to establish Tawrat and Injil, if they were able to live by what Allah had given them, لَأَكَلُوا مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ وَمِنْ تَحْتِ أَرْجُلِهِمْ. They would have eaten from above and from below. Allah would have hooked them up in this life. They would have had a good life here. And still, what is Allah offering you? He's offering you everything you've wanted in your hand, but even when you have it in your hand, you won't have it in your heart. Because Allah will still be your matloob. Like, giving you rizq is not a big deal. If you would think, for example, in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the biggest problem is control over the region. If that's the biggest problem, control over the region. Like if we just control Makkah, we can get rid of the idols. So if you have control over land, then everything will be okay. How does Allah describe control over land? وَأُخْرَى لَمْ تَقْدِرُوا عَلَيْهَا قَدْ أَحَاطَ اللَّهُ بِهَا وَأُخْرَى تُحِبُّونَهَا نَصْرٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَتْحٌ قَرِيبٌ. Secondarily, there's some land you haven't taken charge of yet. Allah's got that covered. Secondarily, aid from Allah is coming. It's like, why is that a priority for you? This is dunya. This is not a big deal. That'll come. You have a much bigger goal. That's the tijara tunjikum min adhabin alim. That's much bigger. That's a priority, a trade that you're going to make with Allah that'll rescue you from a painful punishment. This was the message to humanity, and Allah Azza wa Jal wanted to implore humanity to accept this message. But if you take this one statement of Allah, they didn't appreciate Allah like He deserved to be appreciated. That is probably a true statement of history for nation after nation after nation in humanity. Individuals and nations, families and tribes, cultures, across the board, by and large, we seem to be people, humanity seems to be people that did not appreciate Allah like He deserved to be appreciated. And in order to bring humanity back, what Allah did over and over again is send messengers to help them appreciate Allah like He deserves to be appreciated. But then why did this process discontinue? If He kept sending messenger after messenger after messenger, لِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ, every nation had some guide at least. And He would send people in their language of their culture, messengers of their culture. Why is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the final messenger? This, in the few minutes that I have left in the khutbah, I want to leave you with some thoughts. Allah Azza wa Jal wanted every human being to have the opportunity for guidance. He didn't want to leave humanity unattended. And when He sent, part of sending messengers, at one point Allah Azza wa Jal decided that He will choose especially the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And within the family of Ibrahim, He doesn't just want messengers representing Him and calling people to Him. He wants entire nations doing so. So He chose the children of Israel, Banu Israel, so they could represent the teachings of Allah to all of humanity, so that it's not just the job of one messenger, but a nation can now call other nations to Allah. A nation will represent what it means to make Allah al-matlub. But they failed over and over and over and over again until Allah passed that responsibility to the lineage of the other child of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Through Ismail, this final message came to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And when it came to him, when this Quran was given to him, then Allah Azza wa Jal passed that responsibility of allowing humanity to find Allah and make Him the matlub and appreciate Him like He deserves to be appreciated. He passed that responsibility from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to these children of Ismail at the time, to the people of Makkah, the people of Medina, these Arabs of the region. And when He gave them this responsibility, one of the phrases He used for them is ummatan wasata, a middle people, a middle nation. This means many things, but one of the most compelling meanings I recently came across is the fact that they are in the middle of Allah and His Messenger on the one hand, and the rest of humanity on the other. They're the middle people. They're supposed to get across these teachings to the rest of humanity. You know, like I have this microphone on right now. Its purpose is to take my voice and project it to the rest of you. These people that were chosen by Allah were supposed to be the microphone that projects the message of Allah to all of humanity. And as they would project this message, anybody who would accept this message would become part of this cause. They would join this cause. So the moment your ancestors or yourself took the Shahada, you joined the same mission that was given to Rasulullah ﷺ and through him passed down to us. And so by the end of this surah, as I close, look at what has been said. لِيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ شَهِيدًا عَلَيْكُمْ وَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. So the messenger can be a witness against you. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I thought he's a witness for us. I thought on Judgment Day he's going to beg for our forgiveness, our shafa'ah. Why is the Quran saying he's a witness against us? The Quran is saying that on multiple occasions, including the conclusion of Surah Al Hajj. Why? Because we are being told, you have been passed down a very heavy responsibility. And Allah will challenge His Messenger. Did you do your job? Did you deliver? And Allah's Messenger will say, I got it to them. And once He says, I got it to them, who's going to be held responsible? You are. Because once the message comes to you and me, now we're liable. So in a sense, when the Messenger himself sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, I did my part, then the only interrogation left is your interrogation and my interrogation. And that's shahidan alaykum. He's testifying against you in a sense. And then beyond that, now your job, وَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. And when Allah comes after you and says, well, let's hear it. What do you have to say for yourselves? You were supposed to introduce the entire world to Allah. You get to be witnesses against all of humanity. And the only way you can do that, and I can do that, is we get to say, Ya Allah, we represented the beauty of your deen and the power of your book and the legacy of your messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in every speech, in every action that we possibly could have. We were ambassadors of this faith. People, we didn't even have to open our mouth. People would see us and say, these are the people of the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. These are the people that remind me of God. That we did our part. And if we can do that, then the next interrogation is that of humanity. So the first interrogation is that of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The next one is ourselves. And the last one is humanity. But wait a second. You can't go to the interrogation with humanity if we didn't do our part. They have their own interrogation, but we have one too. We have to answer before Allah too. This deen of ours isn't just about you becoming a better person. It starts with that. Changing your matloob to Allah. Changing what you desire, what you seek, what you want to do in life. To just making Allah happy. That's one part of the equation. But once that happens, then you and I have to be carriers of this faith. We have to be carriers of it. That doesn't mean all of you become preachers and go in the street and trying to talk to people to convert to Islam or something. But it actually means that you represent the model of this deen in the way you live. And when somebody, just by the way you carry yourself, you attract attention. Yusuf alayhi salam in prison is not preaching. He's not. He's just being himself. And people notice. And they come to him and say, could you figure out this dream thing? We figure you're a kind of person that would know. Why did they come? He didn't put a sign up, dream interpretation, cell block 9. There was no ad. There was no advertising, no da'wah that I'm able to interpret dreams. It's just the way he carried himself. Even criminals were attracted. You see that? Even criminals were attracted and say, hey, I want to talk to you for a minute. It's just the way we carry ourselves. We have to, it's not just about image, it's about, really leaving a model behind. And so, لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. How are we going to prepare ourselves to do so? What are going to be the first steps that we take? And I leave you with this, inshallah. فَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِاللَّهِ. Practically speaking, establish the prayer. Make the prayer an institution in your life. It will give you the strength and the right priorities that will change your mindset. Give the zakah. And giving zakah suggests that the way you make your money and the way you give your money should change. So change your spiritual life and change your financial life, basically. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِاللَّهِ, and hold on for dear life to Allah. Holding on to Allah is no longer possible without holding on to the book of Allah. The tafsir of وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِاللَّهِ is in the Quran itself. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. Hold on to the rope of Allah. Become people of prayer, become people of pure income, and then on top of that, of giving, and on top of that, become people that can hold on to Quran. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِاللَّهِ هُوَ مَوْلَاكُمْ. He is your protecting, guarding friend. He's the one who will guard you. He's the one who'll take care of you. فَنِعْمَ الْمَوْلَى. What an amazing protective friend he is. And the final words are the most beautiful. وَنِعْمَ النَّصِيرُ. What an incredible aid, constant helper he is. In other words, he's handed you a massive mission. This is not an easy mission. This is not an easy change that you can bring into your life. And that you're being held responsible for you and I collectively being held responsible for the same burden that once used to fall on the shoulders of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From one shoulder to all of our shoulders, and it's still too heavy. And it was on one man's shoulders, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But now it's on all of our shoulders. And even though that is on our shoulders, clearly we can't carry it on our own. So what does Allah say? وَنِعْمَ النَّصِيرُ. What an incredible helper He is. You take a step, and He will open the doors, and He will help you, and He will help me personally and as an ummah fulfill this responsibility. As we come to the close of the month that celebrates the coming of revelation, we celebrate the charge of the responsibility that was handed to you and handed to me. That's what we're going to be celebrating. We're not celebrating that we don't have to be hungry in the afternoon anymore. We're celebrating the fact that we were chosen by Allah. You and I were chosen by Allah. Huwa ajtabakum. He chose you. He selected each and every one of you qualified for this mission, qualified for this task. You are the people that are going to carry His work until the Day of Judgment. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us realize this responsibility, carry it to the best of our abilities in this life, and pass this responsibility onwards with ihsan to our coming generations. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayat wa dhikr al-Hakim.